now into 6
Good, how are
o'clock.
you?
6 o'clock on the nose.
It's 6 o'clock. I'm going to open the Wareham Conservation Commission meeting of Monday, March 29th at 6 p.m. We have Elisa, Ron, Kwame, Michael, Carol, Mary, myself, and Agent Dave Pichette here, and Mr. Buckland has joined us to discuss the 2 wetland bylaws that he will be submitting to the selectmen tomorrow night. So Ken, it is up to you. Thank you.
Thanks. I guess what we have to do is take a step back and look at the downtown, because this is where this all stems from. As you may be aware, the downtown has not the greatest conditions, and there hasn't been a lot of investment into the properties in the WV1 district in downtown on Main Street and Merchants Way. So what we've been doing as the redevelopment authority is advancing zoning changes for the downtown. And in doing that, at the same time, we've been trying to attract developers to come to the community and start to aggregate properties together and proceed with development proposals. And we do have a couple that are on the way that are in process. One a little bit further along than most. And then looking at the opportunities that they have and the ideas they have, it came across that the no activity zone, the 50-foot buffer for commercial properties could be in conflict with the idea of trying to gain access and accessibility to the waterfront and the water with commercial buildings. So when one of the developers contacted the office and said they were concerned because the indication they were getting was that the no activity zone was an absolute, and the waivers weren't granted for it. And that's something we don't necessarily want to have as even if it's not true, as a story going around, because what we want is to have the developers feel that they can have a fair shake at the review, and they can advance their projects in the ways that they feel will be most successful, but while still allowing the commissions and the boards to have their say as to the values that are expressed in the zoning bylaws or the wetlands bylaw, the other bylaws. So that was the result that came out, was to suggest that the no activity zone would not apply to the downtown village. That was extended to Onset because of the pier and the redevelopment project that's going on with the pier as well. The bylaw itself is fairly simple. It just says that the buffer does not apply in those districts. It doesn't prohibit any other review of wetland interests for the Conservation Commission under the local bylaw or the state wetlands regulations. So it seems that it's a fairly narrow and an attempt to attract developers to the village centers. The other aspect of it was that while the bylaw was open, the restriction of municipal projects without exemptions that are provided under the state law and state regulations didn't seem appropriate. So the additional bylaw change was to allow that the exemptions that are provided by the state regulations, which I think typically, Dave can correct me on this, typically deal with stormwater drainage projects that the town would proceed with on the waterfront. And in the wetland resource areas would be exempted as allowed by the state regulations. And so that the town could essentially save some money by not going through additional reviews. All the requirements for permitting under RDAs and NOIs would apply still. There's no change in that. It's just the exemptions that are provided by state law, state regulations would be provided to the municipal projects. That's the gist of the bylaw changes. And I'm open to discussing it further.
Okay, I will ask each member if they have any questions, but I will ask my first one. First one is, why wasn't anyone in conservation discussed or included in this decision? Was it just you wanted to pass this without any input from us?
No, of course you'd have input to it, as you are now.
Sorry, after the fact. But okay, I will hold off. I will go down the commission. Elissa, any questions?
Well, you got it twice. Not yet. Let me hear other people and I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay,
Sandy, can you see what's on the screen, the document?
I see the bylaw, the first of the two bylaws, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
Okay.
make sure you were
Yep.
seeing that.
So WV must be Wareham Village and OV must be Onset Village. And we'll talk about Onset Village and the pier later. But Ron, any questions and comments on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have a lot of questions. Obviously, the first one you brought up is, we're 10 days out from a special town meeting, and here we are having to throw together a special meeting because we want to throw some bylaw changes in.
Okay,
One of
before
my
you go on, sorry, this would be for special spring in the annual spring. So this is at the end of April. So it's not the one coming up on April 10th. It's just
Okay, so okay.
It's
So, okay.
special spring in the spring.
Okay, so it's not the one that's on the 10th with the
No,
other
it's not.
things that would be, okay,
And-
so this is going to be the following meeting.
What this is that tomorrow is the deadline for putting any articles on the special spring and the spring annual. That's why this is coming at such a late date, because it's due to the selectmen tomorrow. They close the warrant tomorrow.
Okay,
okay.
okay, so,
I just wanted to clarify that for you.
all right, thank you for the clarification, Sandy. So a couple of the issues that I see, not necessarily like immediate issues, but is if we go through this and we decide to support a potential bylaw change to just speak about, the Wareham Village, Onset Village, and then additionally some exceptions for the town, is this going to open up Pandora's box for future conservation issues and saying, well, you had a special, you had a meeting and you got it onto a special to the town meeting to change it for X, Y, and Z. Why can't we get something to try to make changes for other projects in town that, are either right up on a buffer zone or in a buffer zone or whatever it is. So those would be my two biggest concerns, is that if we even thought about allowing, or, I don't want to say allowing this because the voters will have their say in this, but is to, support this, and then down the road, it comes up again and we don't support that one, is that, it could potentially cause, in my opinion, a lot of waves in town with, you know, certain groups of people saying, well, you did it then, why can't you do it now? Oh, you're favoring this person over that person. So those are just my
Yeah.
concerns that I immediately see on those.
And valid concerns, because it is, to me, a issue or a concern if bylaws are being written for one project. It wasn't that long ago, there was a bylaw change for the wetland to allow a path, 30-foot path down to a waterfront off of Burgess Point. And part of the bylaw was that one of the family members had to be disabled, which means they came before conservation and showed the woman's placard that she's disabled. And of course, it's been reviewed and it was reversed, but by that time, conservation had no choice but to approve the project. But I am concerned, and as you have a right to be, the bylaws are being written for one particular project, and who knows what happens down the road. My comment. Okay, anything else, Ron?
No, I'm sure I'll probably have more as other commission members speak and get their thoughts, but I'll start there and stop there for now and continue as we get further into this dialogue.
Thank you. Kwame.
Okay, so the WV1 and OV1 is Wareham Village and Onset Village, correct?
That's correct.
So C, it says projects involving the repair but not expansion of existing lawful. Now, but not expansion of existing and lawful located buildings and structures.
That's already in the bylaw right now. The only change to the bylaw, when you read it the way it is right now, that this section is written with 2A, B, C in there. And what's added is D.
Right. And so that doesn't, so the stormwater and drainage structures and all that good stuff is probably going to change too as well.
The rest of it stays as is.
Public and private projects.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, the public and private projects within the WV1 and OV1 zoning districts for water dependent usage. So you're saying C is good, it's not going to change, but D is definitely the bylaw that's going to change for
That's the
peers.
proposal. That's the number D, letter D is the proposal that's before you.
Okay.
It will be before the
Mhm.
selectmen tomorrow night and potentially before a town meeting on the end of April or in May.
Okay, yeah, so it's D, definitely. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yes, the first project that popped out in mind was obviously the project that's being proposed for Bessie Park. What other areas are we looking at in the Wareham Village for potential development?
Okay, Ken, can you tell him the parameters, what, from Tremont Nail all the way down to British Landing? And is that
That's correct.
WB1?
That's the WV1 district from Tremont Nail down to British Landing.
Okay. Okay, so we're looking at redeveloping that whole region then.
Redevelopment won't come as a wholesale change of the whole area. It'll come on specific projects that come forward. We have 3 developers now who are snooping around or actively promoting projects. One at the old Greer lumber site, 2 on Merchants Way, and 1 at Tremont Nail Factory.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Now, hey, Ken, just a quick question. I was thinking, so as one of these proposed projects, the restaurant and hospitality venue that they're looking to build next to Bessie Park, is that one that you're referring to?
That's correct.
Okay.
And you said Tremont Nail, and what are the 2 on Merchants Way?
They're looking at middle of Merchants Way, aggregation of properties. As you may know, the one building has been condemned beside the 191 Main, the four covering Gornwell building. And the parking lot at the train station is being looked at as well.
What are
And
they,
you, sorry,
sorry, what are they looking at the train station to do what with it?
Well, that's why they're
Seems
looking.
to me
they're
that
trying to
it
figure out-
blocks people from going from the old Cornwall Walls building to the water. I mean, that whole area, the train tracks. What's the thought there?
We're pursuing with the state DOT a pedestrian crossing of the train tracks. The other option we have is if we have new buildings with air going, using the air rights over Merchants Way, they could travel over the railroad tracks and down to the coastline.
okay.
Taking my kayak there is kind of tough, but
Anything else, Michael?
Yeah, how about a similar question then for Onset Village as well? Are we looking at any waterfront projects or anything none of that nature then?
No, the
As
only
well?
thing there is the pier.
What's that?
The only thing in Onset is the pier for redevelopment in the district.
Okay, and
in the
do we,
boathouse.
I'm sorry?
And what they've done right down by the water. It's not the pier, it's done by Coalition at Buzzards Bay, right there.
Okay,
It's done now at this point.
all right. Okay, thank you, Ken. Mr. Buckman.
I'm going to come back to Onset Village because I don't think we need this for the pier or the office on top of the pier, but let's stay with Wareham Village. Carol, anything?
No, questions have been asked and answered.
Mary?
Now, is this basically aimed at the present projects we're dealing with, or also any future ones that may come upon it?
It would apply to future ones as well.
In both areas, the Wareham Village and the Onset Village.
That's correct.
So, Elissa, did you have anything else?
I just want to ask a question, and it isn't directly with this, and that is, when someone comes in to do a project, be it one of these projects or not, what's the order that they go to see? Who do they go see first? Who do they see second? I mean, conservation on this whole thing is last, but maybe you could tell me who are they supposed to see first? They've got an idea.
Their options are to proceed to the town administrator's office, the Office of Planning and Community Development, or the building commissioner. At some point, we want all three offices involved in the new projects that are coming forward. When a project has enough if it's a good enough idea to proceed, we'll go to a department head meeting and invite in the department heads to discuss the project and to critique it for the developer. After that, the application comes in and it comes before the boards and commissions for review.
Thank you.
So, Ken, it says use and development or alterations of land previously altered with structures. Okay. And or fill, such as filled tidal lands. Does that mean the land has been filled previously?
Yes,
So that's tidelands, bulkheads, piers, marine facilities, those have all been filled in, parkland and private. I guess I get confused between, does it have to be filled with tidal lands?
no, it's a chapter 91 term, filled
Okay.
tidal. It's
Now-
what was formerly maybe a mud flat, and it's now upland with a bulkhead on it.
You made a statement that a developer had come to somebody or some entity concerned about the 50-foot setback would cause a problem with their development. Who did he bring that concern to?
To several people.
And can you give me an answer? Because I'm going to ask, who is the one, who was this bylaw yours alone, or did you write this because somebody asked you to?
Somebody asked me to.
Who?
Judy Whiteside.
As a selectman or as a redevelopment authority?
As a concerned citizen, I believe.
Really? So no other concerned citizen was asked about this. So this one developer went to select one, and you wrote an article to bypass the Wetland Protection Act that we have in the town of Wareham.
I don't think the characterization as bypassing the wetland bylaw is correct.
Well,
It
you
doesn't
certainly
bypass the wetland bylaw. All it does
You-
is say that the restriction of prohibition against the 50-foot setback does not apply in this district.
So what happens is anybody in this district can put a building right up on the water's edge, and and conservation has no say in it, if I'm reading this right.
You do have say in it. You can consider the wetland values and how to address them in the development project. There's nothing that restricts you from applying the wetlands regulations to the project. All it does is take out a prohibition that is and apparently this is the story is going around in the people who are coming before, the engineers who are coming before the Conservation Commission, that there's no waivers granted for the 50-foot or the no activity zone buffer. Whether or not that's true, it doesn't help in attracting good quality developers to the community. What we want to do is say that there's a clear standard and that the opportunity to develop is based on the existing regulations and not an absolute restriction against construction.
The Tremont Mill, the plans I've seen indicate a cleared little parkland with a trail around the edge of the property. Most of that is, sorry?
And to be reviewed by the Conservation Commission, because I believe that some of it they're proposing is in wetland resource areas.
Oh, not even wetland, it's swamp. It's pure water at tide. So there isn't even wetlands. There is a lot of wetlands, but it goes through swamp. If this bylaw passes, we can't prevent it from happening?
Yes, you can. There's nothing that says you can't apply the wetlands bylaw and protect the values of the wetland resources that are there. All it does is take out the absolute restriction on the 50, I must say an arbitrary number, 50 feet, that says that no structure can occur within that distance.
And conservation Conservation Commission has the ability to put a waiver on that.
You do have that capability, but
yes, we do.
But it is different when what we're trying to do is make it attractive to developers and somebody to come in and reinvest. We want to protect the values of the wetland resources, but we also want to make it a level playing field where the developer has the opportunity to make the case with the permit saying that the wetland values are going to be applied and not just a random setback distance.
So here's some additional concerns that, now listening some more have, raised my flags a little bit, is we've had a request from a concerned citizen who just so happens to be a selectman here in town, to, write a bylaw change that we as a commission have total control over being able to grant waivers for, to, as you put it, level the playing field for developers to make it more attractive for them. My concern is that, so we make a change to make it more attractive. Personally, I don't see how making the change makes it more attractive for a developer if we let the developer know that we have the ability to grant a waiver. But I think by changing the bylaw, we are, muddying the waters, for lack of better terms, to say that, well, why can't we just make it a blanket bylaw change for any area in town that has a 50-foot no activity zone, to attract more developers? Because there's a lot of projects in this town that want to be brought forth, but a lot of changes need to happen in order for that to happen. And I see a lot of issues arising from making those changes. And I think that we would be, doing ourselves and doing the wetland protections a disservice by making an exception for one particular area, and not everything as a whole.
Sandy, could I make some comments?
Yes, we've made our initial questions and answers. So yes, please, Dave.
I'm just going to bring this language back up here. So I think a couple things that need to be clarified here in terms of some of the language that's in this. But first, I would just like to start off by saying one of the reasons why you had setbacks put in place was to try to prevent the overdevelopment of areas in proximity to wetland resource areas, and especially in areas that are already intensively developed. Why would you want to make that even worse by negating any setbacks for future development? So that would be my point there. These are exactly the places where you don't want to see additional overdevelopment. But in terms of some of the specific sites that we've discussed, there are provisions in the bylaw that allow work to go on in these no activity zones if the sites have already been previously developed. And the onset pier is a perfect example. There would be no restriction at all for any work to be done on the pier because it's a previously existing structure that's already within that area. And there's built-in language in the bylaw that allows work to be done in that area, which isn't shown on this particular page because it's in the section prior to what you see here, which I have the full language, which we can look at after if we need to. So I think there is some concern that I have that makes it sound like work wouldn't have been allowed on the onset pier because of our current bylaws, and that's simply not the case. So I think that's an inaccuracy that should not be included in this explanation because it's just not accurate. I totally understand the point of wanting to attract developers as far as making things appealing and not make it appear that they can't do anything. But I think a lot of these sites that have been previously developed, there is leeway to allow work to be done in these areas. Now, it may not mean that these people can do whatever they want, because again, that's not going to be necessarily positive for the environment and the wetland resource areas that we're here to protect. So, I just like to make those sorts of comments in terms of what we're seeing here. So in the language itself that's proposed to be added, it talks about water dependent uses such as bulkheads, piers, marina facilities, all that stuff. There's provisions already in the bylaw that permit projects that require Chapter 91 licenses, which is discussed just above in the Section B. So you can do projects like that in these areas currently. You don't need any change to the bylaw for that to be able to be done. So, again, I just want to point those sorts of things out. And there's also some language, I believe it's in the, let's see, in the explanation, it talks about so that projects can actively use and access the waterfront. Again, there is nothing in the bylaw currently that would prevent somebody from accessing the waterfront even with a new project, because again, that would have to be a Chapter 91 project, and that's already stated that that can occur. Now, in terms of building a building right up to the edge of, let's say, a seawall or something, then yes, then that's the sort of thing that could potentially be prohibited by the commission at this point. But again, that's exactly the sort of things you would want to prohibit to prevent further impacts to these wetland resource areas. So, I think there's existing language in the bylaw that allows more than what is being represented here in the language that we're seeing. So that's really the main thing that I wanted to point out. And again, so far, we haven't even had a formal proposal of anything at the site that we're all chatting about other than work in the water. So to say that there's a bylaw needed to help permit something, we don't even have a plan in front of us to review. So I think it's a little bit premature to be putting certain language like this into a bylaw without really understanding what is allowed currently and what isn't under the existing language. And I think, to me, it's not clear to some of what may or may not be allowed based on the language that's written in the explanation, which to me is just not in any way accurate. So that's what I wanted to speak about on that particular piece. And as I said, I can answer further questions if the commission members have questions and/or can. So again, this was something that was sort of put together, and I didn't necessarily have a chance to review it previously. So when Sandy sent it to me, that was the first opportunity I had to take a look at it.
Thank you. Ken, what projects in Onset Village 1 is being considered for this bylaw change?
Just the pier.
Well, that would be, you don't need any bylaw for that. The harbor master's office stays on the pier. When the pier gets expanded a bit in order to make it more stable, the harbor master's office stays there. So you don't need a bylaw for that. There had to be something that concerned you that required this.
No, it's just the pier.
Okay, and to me, that's not, I know that you're going to submit this to the selectmen tomorrow, but there's absolutely no reason for OV1 to be in it. It's not a reason because that is well permitted. And
If that's the case, I'll take it out of the draft that I submit to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you. And because now the two merchant way activities, you said a pathway to the water over the railroad bridge or across the railroad tracks. But what were you planning to do with the building that was falling down? That's well within 50 feet, isn't it, of the water?
Well, Sandy, again, if I could just back up for a moment and not specifically talk about one project, but just generally speaking, all the buildings on Merchants Way, the whole area is all paved. There wouldn't be limitations in terms of what could be done there because it's, again, previously altered land in terms of what is permissible under the language in the bylaw. So, we don't need to speak per se about a specific project. I don't think this is the place to pick on certain projects because I don't even think Ken knows what the projects are specifically at this point. Am I right, Ken?
Well, the projects that are being considered are ones that take over the air rights over Merchants Way so that they actually will be structures within 50 feet of the waterfront, and so within the buffer area and the prohibition against no activity. It doesn't. It's a question of how you approach it. Do you approach it with the glass half empty or the glass half full? I think you have to look at the idea of if a building is within 50 feet or on the waterfront, what wetland resource impacts does it have? And so adjust it accordingly to address the wetland impacts. But at the same time, provide that there could be some programmatic activity, such as a marine manager's viewpoint to the marina that makes sense to have it on the waterfront so that the visibility is assured for the marina itself.
Yeah, that was brought up at one point, and I think there's several marinas in town, and not all of them have or need buildings literally right on the edge of the water. So, I mean, if it were set back somewhat, you're really not going to change the visibility all that much between where the building would be and where the boats would be. This isn't that big of an area, and the distance that you would set it off the edge wouldn't be that great. But again, getting away from the specific projects, I just wanted to bring those few points out. And before we get into potentially other specific projects, I would like to maybe address the second bylaw amendment, because again, I think some of the language in there is just not accurate in terms of the way it's presented.
Okay,
So if
before
I-
we move to the second bylaw, Ken, on this one, would this change in the bylaw, would that allow the boardwalk from Tremont Nail to Merchants Way? Would this allow it to happen? Because I know that's one of the plans, is to move a walking board between Tremont and right along the water's front.
Well, again, I think to speak to a specific project is tricky, but that any change like this that's being proposed by Ken would not in any way make it such that the commission would have to allow it. Let's put it that way.
Okay,
That's correct. You
Yes.
still have your review function over all projects within the wetland resource areas and the buffer area to those wetland resource areas.
we'll go on to the second article, but I'm just extremely upset that this bylaw change came in without any input from conservation and came in from the planning department, right? Ken, you are the sponsor.
That's correct.
Will there be a public hearing on this bylaw change?
That'd be up to the Board of Selectmen.
Not the planning department.
No, it's not a zoning bylaw, so we don't hold public hearings on general bylaws, just zoning bylaws.
Just zoning. So it's possible that the first time that people are going to see that is when they get their article for a special spring town meeting in annual spring. No other chance of input unless the selectmen deem it such. Okay. Now to the second article.
Well, Sandy, just to make a point, Sandy, the Conservation Commission could hold a public hearing if it so wanted to. It doesn't have to be done by the selectmen, the planning board, or anything else. If you at some point decide you would wish to have such a thing, that's perfectly within your rights
Okay.
to do so.
Then that's a
just-
possibility.
Just bringing that up as a point.
I just needed to understand the bylaw. I had a tough time thinking, why do we have it and what does it cover and what will it do for future projects we don't know about? And okay, so we will think about at the April 7th meeting, we'll talk about putting together a public hearing, but don't we have to post it 2 weeks before?
Well, we can talk about what's necessary procedurally for that.
On the
Later.
7th?
Yeah.
Okay, next bylaw. However, all the exceptions shall be available for applications to municipal projects. Oh, please, Ken, tell me what that means in English.
That means that the exemptions that are provided by the state law and regulations is available to be applied to municipal projects.
And what are those exceptions? I tried reading the state law and I couldn't understand it. So I was hoping you could give me the ABCDs or the outline of it.
Well, most of the exemptions that are of importance are the ones that deal with stormwater structures and improvements within the wetland resource areas.
Yeah, and if I could, Sandy, just kind of get into that a bit.
Please.
Just for the commission's explanation. So this one here, again, is one that is very misleading in terms of the explanation. So the explanation makes it sound like currently, because of our bylaw, that some of these projects that you see listed are, let's say, not allowed to be done in terms of without having the commission's review. And if this change went into place, then these projects could go forth without conservation review or approval, which simply, again, is not in any way accurate. In terms of the exemptions that exist in the state law, there are exemptions for work to be done on existing utilities, stormwater systems, sewer systems, the whole 9 yards, even repaving roads and things like that. But for anything to be done that's new, there is no exemption in the state law even for such things. For example, the stormwater project that was proposed at Bessie Park. There's no exemption in the state law that would allow for a project like that to go forth that is being negated by our bylaw. So that's something that would have required a notice of intent to be submitted for the commission's review. Currently, there's no exemption for something like that, or for public access or infrastructure or anything like that. So the only thing that's exempt is for existing structures to be repaired or rebuilt. And that is an exemption, and that's currently in place, and that's currently something that our own bylaw provides for and allows. So again,
Okay.
I'm a little confused by what the thinking was that was going to, why this was put in place. Maybe there's some specific project that I don't know about, or maybe someone's not clear on what is currently exempt and what isn't. So maybe there could be a bit of explanation on that.
Oh, good. Okay, Ken, what is it going to gain, or what is it going to do by putting this additional sentence in on this bylaw?
I think the important point of this particular section is you read the existing regulation, and it says the exemptions are not available to apply because of this bylaw. We're just restoring that the state exemptions apply to municipal projects. I'm not sure exactly what Dave means by the exemptions are still available, because this particular section of the law says that the exemptions are not available for the projects that we identify here as municipal projects, and say the application of the exemptions are available to those projects.
So,
I think what,
Sorry.
to respond to that, I think why that's letter B in the current language is in there is because there are certain provisions in the state law, for example, that would allow someone to, just as one example, fill in a small wetlands, because that's not something that's regulated under the state law. And so therefore that sort of a thing, that exemption wouldn't be allowed in the bylaw. But again, that doesn't really relate to the sorts of projects that are listed, like public stormwater projects or public access or things like that. So I think there's a lot of exemptions or different sorts of exemptions that wouldn't have any application in any way to the types of projects that are listed. So I just don't want people to think that that there's some sort of exemption in the state laws for new stormwater projects or public accesses or roads or infrastructure of these types, And we're preventing that through our bylaw language because it's simply not the case. So again, I think there's a
What
little
does
bit
it-
of
What- then what
potential
does-
confusion as to what is currently exempt and what isn't. And that's why something like this might have been put in there. So, you know, there's no current exemption for, let's say, a Bessie Park project in the state law that we're negating by the language we have here in our bylaw.
Ken?
The exemption is still available to the municipal projects, whatever they might be, if the wording is put in. Although an example may be that Bessie Park didn't apply, but there could be other projects that apply under the exemptions that are provided by the Wetlands Protection Act, which the way it's written right now is not allowed.
And that may be true. What Ken just said may be true. What I don't want to see happen is an explanation like this put in here to mislead people to think that such projects are currently exempt and we're not allowing them because of our bylaw language. And that's just simply not the case. The explanation is not correct in terms of how it's written at all.
Okay. Questions, commissions? Elissa, question.
No.
Ron?
I think I just, follow along Dave's lines here where, there are exemptions that will apply to certain things and it's not going to apply to certain things. I think making any changes that, aren't thoroughly thought of or thought through and talked about just because we want to put something there that might make an exception available. I think it's just, once again, making a change that, isn't necessarily necessary, especially not knowing what a project might be considered for. So, maybe there's a project in mind that isn't being spoke of, but won't be spoke of until we make a change that would allow potentially the project to go through without, deep scrutiny or what have you. So to Dave's point, it definitely it's not clear in its direction, and I think that that would just cause future concerns and issues.
Thank you. Kwame?
No, I have to agree with what Ron said. I mean, these changes that are going to be in place are going to almost be like etched in stone for later down the road. So we have to be very careful because if not, we're going to be open up a can of worms per se. So we just have to really have these things really thought out.
Yeah, the idea of being it's been presented to us less than a week before they're due for the selectmen. It just, I don't know what type of background happened or research happened.
I think Sandy, that Kwame and Ron had the right idea from the fact is that you don't want to do it and then regret it. You really have to think about what you're allowing.
Yep. To me, more research as to what this really means to actually put it out in detail. Because I don't want to be, never mind, that's a comment. Michael, anything?
Yeah, kind of what everybody said so far, especially what Ron said at the beginning. Are we opening up a Pandora's box here for what may happen down the road? And also kind of the point what I was getting earlier in regards to Wareham Village. Are there any future projects some of these developers are eyeing that they could say, okay, bang, we could go ahead and easily get access to and gain, how should I put it? Be able to get the clearances on, basically. That's my big concern. That's all.
Okay. Carol? Oh, sorry.
I think it
Elisa?
needs to be discussed more by this board. I think we needed a lot more time to look at this and to understand it better. And if we are able to already make waivers for things, then it's a moot point. it makes no sense to me at this point to be trying to shove this through this quick. I think we really need to discuss it and look into it a lot further.
Thank you. Mary?
It needs to be looked in a lot further. It sounds very confusing, the language they're using.
Yes, and just so everybody understands, it's not our say. We're just one
Right.
of the several people who will be on town meeting floor that can say yea or nay, whether we like this or don't like this. It's not our say. It's going to be presented to the selectmen. The selectmen choose to put it on the warrant, and then it's town meeting. So if this
Right.
goes through as it's presented, I expect all of us to be at town meeting and voice our concern about the lack of preparedness or completely understanding what this bylaw change is. Because honestly, last time we were given a bylaw change without any input from conservation. I think that might still be in litigation. So I am concerned, but that's me. Anything else for Ken? If not, we can say goodnight to him. Thank you, Ken, very much.
Thank you for
We
your
appreciate
input,
your
and you're all
time.
doing a great job. I appreciate the work you do for the town.
Thank you. Well, you will take care of OV1, won't you?
Yes, I will.
Appreciate that.
Thanks,
Good
Ken.
night.
Good
Thank
night.
you, Ken.
The
Bye.
next thing on the agenda, Preservation Associates of the pier design. How long ago was it? Dave, year and a half?
Yeah.
They came before us and we denied them their dock. They had a dock permit and it was intended for dinghies only. And part of their requirement was that there would be no boats tied up to this dock. They came before us and presented a dock design because they wanted the stabilization of being able to get in and out of their boats off of a pier. Because they said as they got older, they fell in more often. And I can totally understand that. So conservation denied it. It was in the eelgrass and we were concerned about shadowing and all that other things that come along with putting a new pier out in the water. And so we denied it. They appealed and we've had a meeting with attorneys and with them, and this is their new design. I'm not asking you to say yay or nay. I'm just wanting to show you what they came up with, and I thought it was very clever. They got themselves some floating piers, and that's it. I just wanted to share with you what was happening. Dave, you want to add anything?
No, not really. I think, I don't know, Sandy, if you had emailed that schematic to everyone, but I can certainly do that if you have not. So that
I
way,
have, but you can put it up.
I don't happen to have that.
Okay, but I did mail it to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, I did see the email from Sandy with the updated design.
So you got
Yeah,
some
so,
floating.
so there are
Yep.
still some things obviously to discuss on that. And at some point, we'll have to bring it back up formally at a Concom normal meeting and invite the folks from the other side to discuss the proposal.
So as far as I know, we've got this one and one other project that we denied that has been, what's the word I'm looking for?
Appealed.
Appealed, that's it. So there's one more project that's been appealed, and I think that's the only two we got pending, isn't it, Dave?
Yes, in terms of appeals, yes, I believe so.
Okay. That was it for the agenda. Does anybody have anything else before we say goodnight?
Madam Chairwoman?
Margaret, this is not a public hearing, sorry.
No, I understand that. I just wanted to request that when you do bring the issue up again, I represent Preserve Association Trust,
Yes.
that you give us some notification of that in case the board has any questions of us. Certainly
Thank
be
you.
willing to do that.
We will make sure that happens.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's kind of why I said we should bring this up, so that way we can invite you folks, so that way it is a public hearing and people can weigh in and comment and whatnot.
Thank you. I
Definitely.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Hi, Margaret.
Hi, Margaret. Bye, Margaret. If not, anybody else?
I mean, before we all run away and go enjoy the rest of our evening, I guess, you know, the big thing for me is maybe understanding everybody's mindset. I think I kind of know where everybody leans in their favor or not favor of, you know, the potential changes. But you know, what's your? Could I get everybody's feeling on what their thinking is? You know, I mean, me, I don't think I would. I'm not going to support a vote, you know, at the meeting to make these changes. For, I mean, just for the simple fact of, you know, the timing of it, to me just doesn't make any sense. I don't like when things are rushed. I think everybody knows that about me, and the different meetings and the different boards that I represent, that I like to have opportunity to do due diligence. But I just want to get everybody else's, you know, feedback and what their thought process is. Because like Sandy said, we can't yay or nay it, you know, from a board perspective, and stop it from, you know, going to vote if the selectmen do decide to put it on the warrant. You know, my hope is that maybe they won't, based on the same feelings that we have. But you know, if anybody has feedback on that.
I have to tell you that probably unlike many people here, I would love to see something be developed in Wareham to make Wareham a destination. And that's, I don't mean destination for cannabis, but a destination. True.
Late, too late.
I think having it as a destination where families can come and you can go out to eat, you can get an ice cream, you can look at the boats. You know, Newburyport did a great job. I mean, a lot of towns have done a really nice job, and Wareham has been held behind 51 miles of coastline, and we have no restaurant on the water, near the water, overlooking the water.
You have Narrows, it's right across the street.
As I said, we have no
And the
restaurant.
Narrows, do they make some good food?
Yes, I'm
Say
not
that.
complaining about the narrows that way, but when you're in there, you're not, I mean, it's a little better.
You're not
now.
outside.
But,
Yeah, I don't.
but
I
if the
don't
bylaw is already
disagree.
there, I'm sorry, Ron, go ahead.
So my only
I-
other thing is that like Ron, I think that this was a little rush job coming in, and I didn't like feeling like I was being pushed around.
The thing that concerned me the most was just the inaccuracies of the statements in the language that was written. And when people see this come out, you know, they may take that to be factual information because they don't necessarily know any better. But to me, these are the sorts of things that bother me the most when somebody presents information that's just factually incorrect, and passing it off as though it is, to try to get people to vote in a certain way, because it sort of puts them almost in sort of a fear mode, like, oh geez, look, if we don't do this, then this can't happen, you know? And so that's the problem I have, is just the inaccuracy of the information that's been written into it currently. If there was some discussion and we all kind of went over what is legal and what is correct, and then they came forth with something, fine, you know, but just the way it was done in the inaccuracies in the information, that's the thing I have the biggest problem with.
Agree.
I can agree 100%.
Yeah, and I didn't really want to, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask you for comments.
And also, I was kind of on the same page. I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing something nice developed in Wareham, downtown Wareham Village. I think it's a beautiful spot. You got the waterfront right there, and you got kind of a nice historically looking downtown. By all means, at the same time, you got something that seemed to be rushed. It seemed to be. Let's put it this way. As Dave said, you already have bylaws and stuff that's already written. So why have this broad language-based thing rushed to us? That just didn't make any sense. That's all.
Yep. Kwame?
Oh, just real quickly, I was just trying to digest the information that was given. trying to read and then looking into the bold italics, and it just seemed like some of the language we was trying to put on, or whoever is trying to build, was just rushed. And we just, like I said, and I agree with Ron, we have to be careful, because once you put these things in place, then something else is going to come in and going to say, hey, you did this way, and how come you can't do it like this now?
Yep.
But I'm totally, I definitely want to see something productive downtown. That'd be awesome. But yeah, you just have to be real careful how they word these things.
And the
Well-
other thing that, I think should be of note too is, I think it would be a little different if it was I don't want to say a mass of concerned citizens, but it's a singular person that has brought up the concern. And I worry about the singular person being someone that, it's being presented to tomorrow night. Is that, where do you potentially find the line of, a conflict of interest in certain things? Not to say that it is, but, if I'm outside looking in, that's the first thing I could think of is what's the benefit that could potentially be brought up to, to a change being made by one person making I know we have ways we can do things in town, but it takes, a certain amount of people to make things happen. And I think just one person, no matter who it is, I just don't think is enough to, in my opinion, substantiate any type of, major changes.
Yeah, I was very concerned that it was already out there that we would deny the project. Well, we haven't even seen the project, so how do we know how we're going to, never mind. It was just,
Did anybody go to his 2:00 or his sessions to down at the where the Nantucket Lightship was? He was going to be there to answer questions 2 Saturdays. I think this coming Saturday and last Saturday.
well, I didn't go because I consider it to be a major conflict since we're going to be hearing the project and I wanted to hear it as a conservation commission as opposed to going down there and talking to Danny on the project. So I chose not to go.
Okay. Did anybody go?
No.
Alan did. All right, Alan.
And it was not pillow talk when he came back. Okay,
Okay, we'll take that.
all right. So if it's 7:01, can someone, if we're ready, we can close and everybody can go get something to eat.
I move that we close the meeting.
Second.
And a motion and a second, all in favor, wave. Thank you very much for attending tonight, and I appreciate your questions, and I hope you understand more what these two articles represent to us, because we would have to implement them.
Thank
Bye,
you.
Alan. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, Dave.
Good night, everybody.
See you
Have a
guys
good-
later.
Take it easy.